Hey folks, welcome back to Only Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to cover all the new releases I'm interested in that are being released over the first half of 2025. I'll include dates here where I can, but just check in case they change, just in case there's any changes. But yeah, without further ado, on January 7th, I have Fonda and Shannon Lee's Breath of the Dragon, which is like uh, the first of a duology inspired by the teachings and the life of Bruce Lee. And I actually got an arc for this book. I may actually already have posted a video on it, but this was like a really fun book. Like it's pegged as YA, but YA has little to nothing to do with the story. It was just a really fun, really entertaining read. Like if you're a fan of Fonda Lee, you're going to find everything that you love about her in this book. Moving on February 4th, I have Richard Swan's Grave Empire, which is the first of a brand new trilogy from him. It's set in the same world as his previous series, Justice of Kings, whatever that is. I haven't read that trilogy as yet, but I did want to try this one because I heard it's set within the same world, and you don't need to read that to read this. And I want to give him a shot and see how he managed to build up all the hype that he has. See if it's something that works for me. Moving on February 11th, I have Heather Fawcett's Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, and this is the third in the Emily Wilde in the Emily Wilde series. Honestly, I wasn't even sure there was going to be a third book the way that this second book ended, and so I'm very fascinated to see what direction she's taking this story in. And yeah, like these books are just cozy, charming, interesting, whatever you want to call it. And I'm here for it. Like one of my favorite series of all time. I keep saying it every time I discuss this series, these books. One of my favorite series of all times is Marie Brennan's Memoirs of Lady Trent, and I'm enjoying the treatment that the same ideas that Heather Fawcett takes and puts to the fairy realm with this. So I'm excited to see that. The next book I have lined up on my list of releases on February 25th is Gaurav Mohanty's Dance of Shadows. This I do have the first book, Sons of Darkness, that I want to read. I want to give it a shot to see what this is all about. This honestly is mainly because of the wife. Like she's more into that. She's more into like Indian altered fantasy stuff. So I'm reading this mainly as a read along with her. But yeah, let's see what he's all about. Like I know Patrick loved this book, loved the first book in this series, so hopefully this lives up. Moving on March 4th, I have David Daglish's The Radiant King, and I really love his Vagrant Gods trilogy. So I'm excited to pick up his latest epic fantasy, and let's see what he has in store for us. Moving on, also on March 4th, I have Amal el-Mohtar's The River Has Roots, and I honestly don't know what to expect with this one. I didn't look at the blurb. I just like the cover, and I know Evie was a bit hyped for this one, so I was like, okay, that's something I need to pay attention to then. So I'll give it a shot, and hopefully it works for me. On March 4th, we have the third in the Unorthodox Chronicles series by James J. Butcher, Jim Butcher's son, and that is called Iron Task. And let's see what this dynamic duo gets up to in this particular outing. Like, Grimsby is honestly he's a bit of a pathetic main character. Hopefully he gets a bit more interesting here, but I'm along for the ride. I have nothing better to do, why not, right? And I have an arc anyway, so yeah. Moving on March 11th, I have Catherine Addison's The Tomb of Dragons, and I think this will be the third in her Cemeteries of Amalo series. The previous two, like I didn't have the best of times, I didn't have the worst of times with them. Like I'm just chugging along at this point. Like I'm interested to see where this one goes because the previous book did some interesting things within the world. So yeah, I'm kind of along for that. And also on March 11th, we have a book that I'm honestly not even sure I'll read, but it's Terry Brooks's Gallifile, which is the start of an all new series within the Shanra universe. And yeah, it's Shanra. Like Shanra is like one of the most well-known fantasy series at this point. And I'm curious to see what Terry Brooks does with this. Like the only genre stuff I've read so far was like the original trilogy, and then a random trilogy far later on. What that mainly just to see how much the world has progressed, like everyone keeps saying. I believe this one he goes back into the past, and this like is actually the backstory related to his version of Gandalf and their order. So I don't know if I'll give it a shot as yet. Maybe, who knows? We'll see. But the next book I am definitely going to give a shot. And on March 25th, that is Eliza Chance Tideborn. And this is the wrap up for her Drummed World duology. And the first book, Fathom Folk, was one of the most ambitious things I read in 2024. So I'm pretty excited to see what she gets up to in this second book, how she wraps everything up. And yeah, like hopefully she sticks the landing. Moving on April 1st is an author who can do no wrong, and that is Robert Jackson Bennett with A Drop of Corruption. This is the second book in his most recent series, and I'm here for the whole fantasy detective mystery with Robert Jackson's unique style, we'll call it. Like I really enjoyed the first one, and I'm hoping this A Drop of Corruption just keeps the ball rolling on that front. Moving on is on April 8th is the finale to one of my favorite ongoing series, and that's Mark Lawrence's The Book That Held Her Heart. And this wraps up his library trilogy, and this is probably the most creative, fascinating thing I've read from Mark Lawrence to date. I'm excited to see how it all comes together, because the previous book was a few bars above the first, so I'm hoping that with this one he goes even more. He escalates things even more. So yeah, I'm pretty excited for that. On April 22nd, I have C.S.E. Cooney's Saint Death's Herald, and I read the first book of this series mainly because it was a contender for the World Fantasy Award a year, and it was offbeat. It's kind of like a YA slash literary slash magical realist slash it's just a crazy mishmash story, kind of inspired by the Tamsin Murin's Gideon series. So I'm kind of interested to see what she gets up to in this latest outing. But yeah, there's that. And then on May 13th, one of my potentially my most anticipated book of the year, absolutely one of the a book I expect to enjoy tremendously, and that is Laura Grimdark's The Devils. I don't think I need to tell you about this book. I don't think I need to tell you about this author. So I'll just keep moving along. On May 13th, I also have Christopher Moore's Anima Rising. I don't know much about this book except that I think it's set in Venice, and it involves like painting, and it's Christopher Moore. Like I've been wanting to try his stuff for quite a while now, and I figure we're better to start on his absolute latest, and let's see if he works for me or not. But I'm expecting this to be like one of those books that I pick up every year that's different and unusual from what I would typically read, and it often works out really well for me. I'm hoping that this book fits that niche for 2025. Moving on May 13th, we have another wrap-up to another trilogy I've been enjoying tremendously, and that is Stephen Arion's The Sorrow of the Sea, and this wraps up his historical fantasy series inspired by the later days of the Mongol Empire. And yeah, where things left off, like it was interesting to see the conflicts that were being built up to. So I'm expecting this book to be action-packed and intense, and should be a really fun ride. And then May 20th, we have the book that I honestly didn't know was even a thing until recently, but I'm extremely excited for it. And for me, it's a more underrated series that I've enjoyed tremendously, and that is Vivian Shaw's Strange New World. And this picks up the thread from her Dr. Greta Helsing series. It takes the characters in a brand new setting. In this case, they go over to America on a journey, and yeah, like this series has just been like this whole cozy fantasy of madness kind of thing. Like this was cozy fantasy before cozy fantasy was a thing. And yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. And I'm sad that it's also supposedly the last in the series, but all good things must come to the end, to an end. And then May 27th is also one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and that is GGK's Written on the Dark. By the time this book comes out, even at the time of this recording, like I literally only have 2 more GGK books to read, and I can say I've read everything he's ever released. So I'm hyped to see what Written on the Dark builds on. I think his most recent releases have kind of been building on the threads of his shared world that incorporates so many of his different stories in different timelines and different settings. So I suspect this will be in that same vein. Not so we'll see. We'll see. Like I'll be excited to see. I do plan to reread at least one of the books that I've already read in preparation for this, just in case that thread isn't there. So we'll see. But yeah, we're nearly at the end of the 6-month period. On June 3rd, we have Vaishnavi Patel's latest book, which is 10 Incarnations of Rebellion. And in this one, she departs from what she's been doing so far, which is the whole the whole female the whole feminist retelling mythology thing, and instead she gives us a story of rebellion that's inspired by, once again, Hinduism, and in this case the 10 incarnations of rebellion is also a reference to one of the major Hindu deities. So it'll be interesting to see how she incorporates that fact into this story. I'm expecting, she's a very skilled author, so I'm expecting really great things from this book. To keep things moving, on June 10th is a book I actually have an arc for, and that is Kate Elliott's The Witch Roads. And this is the start of Kate Elliott's latest epic fantasy. She's an author I really want to get into. So far I've only read like an anthology from her, and I enjoyed some of it and not all of it. So I'm hoping that a series works better for me than her, and I figure let's just jump in on her latest. And then lastly, on June 24th, I have another trilogy wrap up, and that is R.J. Barker's Heart of the Weirwood. And given how just bleak and bloody and gritty and grimdark and epic and intense the previous book ended, I'm expecting this trilogy to wrap up in just a really, really intense way. And yeah, that's kind of the list of new releases I have my eye on for the next 6 months. Am I going to read all of these? Probably not. I'm certainly going to read most of them, and in addition to that, I'm sure there's new stuff coming out I haven't touched on that I will pick up and read. So like I tend to do like quarterly videos where I touch on the new releases. You can check those out to see what I actually get around to reading. And yeah, if there's any that I missed that are coming out in the next 6 months, feel free to drop a comment and let me know. And yeah, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.